All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. Thanks for attending the webinar today. Today's webinar is going to be why companies using Microsoft Dynamics GP are switching to Sage Intacct. My name is Joe Gupser. I am the partner of the Sage Software Division here at Martin Associates. Also on the call with me is Brett Penzinger. He is the director of our Sage Software Division. And then Chris Isbell, who most of you guys probably already know, who is our partner who kind of leads up the Dynamics GP side of our company, is on the call as well. So I just wanted to give a quick introduction to them. And there's all of our contact information if needed, if you guys want to reach out, if you don't already have it. Quick agenda about what we're going to cover today. We're going to do a brief introduction on the Sage Intacct product. We're going to do some Dynamics GP comparison, talk about some user types, Sage Intacct learning a little bit, the look and feel, dimensions, and dashboards. We're going to talk about the reporting options that Sage Intacct provides. We'll talk about workflow approvals. We'll talk about some automation processes when we get into the AP automation, the bank reconciliation, and the AR automation out there. So a quick introduction to Sage Intacct. First of all, I wanted to let everybody know that the webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording via email when this webinar is finished. Should be within the next 24 hours after it's finished. And then also, if you have any questions, please enter them in through the chat or the Q&A part of the of Zoom there, and we'll kind of get them answered at the end of the webinar here. So Sage Intacct. Sage Intacct is what's referred to as a born in the cloud solution that was founded in 1999. It was a native cloud product from the first line of code. So they wrote it to be a cloud-based, SaaS-based product from the get-go. It's a very reliable product. It's got a 99.8% uptime commitment. Also has some automatic backups of your data happens for you as well as part of your Sage Intacct subscription. Everything runs through a web browser you're going to see here in a little bit. So as a result, the interface is more fresh and modern looking than on-premise ERP systems that you might be used to. Because it's a web-based, SaaS-based product, you can access your Sage Intacct from anywhere at any time as long as you have a device that has a web browser on it and you have an internet connection. We're going to get into the concept of dimensional accounting and talk about that. We'll look at how it has dashboards and how you can use those to help you analyze your data. It's got multi built right into it, so multi-entity, multi-bin, and multi-currency if you have the need for any of those. Approval/workflow processes are built into the system, and we'll look at them in more detail. We'll talk about the automatic upgrades and how there's 4 per year and what that all means compared to GP here in a little bit. It's referred to as a best of breed product, which means it can integrate easily with other solutions. And there's a whole marketplace we'll talk about briefly. The product was designed for CFOs, accounting teams, finance teams looking for a powerful solution to get to their accounting data out there. And the last bullet's kind of a good one right there. It was chosen as the first and only preferred financial management software by the AICPA. So here's a little timeline of Intacct. So basically, point out a couple things here. 99, it was founded, as I mentioned. 2009 is when it got its endorsement from the AICPA. 2017 was a big date in Intacct's history because that is when Sage actually purchased the product. And from 2017 on, the product has just grown exponentially at a steady rate as Sage just kind of put a lot more development dollars into the product. So it's kind of really fleshed it out over the last 8 years or so into a very solid ERP solution out there. Always ranks really high in customer satisfaction surveys year after year. I mentioned Sage Intacct Marketplace. So this is kind of the best in business that I was kind of talking about. So there's a marketplace out there where you can do add-on products based on the area that you're looking in. If you wanted to add on, EDI, for instance, or document management, things of that nature. So there's a whole marketplace out there for these add-ons that you could go to look at that stuff. So let's talk a little bit about Dynamics GP and some of the comparisons between the two products. So Dynamics GP, as I'm sure you all have already heard, is coming to the end of support. Microsoft has announced that they will end the product support and updates for the Dynamics GP product on December 31st of 2029. After that point in time, the only updates that will be provided are security patches when needed, and those would happen currently through April 30th of 2031. There are no longer any new perpetual license of GP being sold. Those ended on April 1st of this year. New subscription licenses could be added all the way up until April 1st of 2026. However, existing Dynamics GP customers can still add users if they have the need to between now and the end of the product life. Some quick comparisons here between Intacct and Dynamics GP. The one is the deployment model. So this is how the product gets installed. Dynamics is what is referred to as an on-premise solution, which means you have to have a dedicated server that the product gets installed on. That server can be hosted out in the cloud, but it's an on-premise, has to be installed on a server, and then a client needs to be installed on each workstation in order to access Dynamics. Sage Intacct is a SaaS or cloud-based product. So that means there's no need for a dedicated server. There's no need to install a client on the workstation. It's all hosted for you out there, and you hit the client via a web browser like I mentioned earlier. Let's talk about software update frequencies. So Dynamics GP is still releasing annual product updates. However, as you have probably noticed over the prior years of working with Dynamics GP, these updates are a manual process to get them installed, which requires some downtime in your business, doing testing, things of that nature. The updates that are still being provided are more limited in nature in terms of new features as a result of being tied to outdated legacy architecture. Sage Intacct, on the other hand, they put out quarterly product updates with new features. So 4 times a year, updates come out. And a good part about these is these updates are automatically applied to your system because they get applied across the entire Sage Intacct community all at one time. It happens in the evening. You get an email letting you know when it's going to happen. But basically, you're on one version. When you leave for that day, when you come in the next day, you're on the new version, seamlessly ready to move on with your new features. So you have a lot of savings and costs in that regard because you don't have to perform manual updates and whatnot. Multi-entity is another big difference between the two. So they both are multi-entity. However, Dynamics GP companies are independent of each other. They're basically individual silos of data. So as a result, each company has to have its own chart of accounts, vendors, customers, items. Sage Intacct, as we'll see here in a little bit, has what is referred to as a top level that sits above all the companies and entities. This allows multiple entities to share a chart of accounts, vendors, customers, items. They can be restricted down by entity or company if need be, but it gives you one place to maintain this list so you're not having to maintain, the same customers and vendors across, 2, 5, 10 different companies you might have out there. Chart of accounts is another big key difference between the two. Dynamics GP uses the concept of natural accounts and account segments, and a GL account needs to be created for each required combination of natural account and sub accounts combination that you have out there. So your chart of accounts can get pretty big pretty quick if you have a lot of sub accounts out there because you're creating every possible combination that you need for each account. Sage Intacct, on the other hand, uses the concept of natural accounts and dimensions. Dimensions replace your sub accounts, and then what happens is you tag transactions to the appropriate dimensional values when things are being entered, and it helps reduce the number of GL accounts that need to be created, and it helps you with your slicing and your dicing of your data that we're going to see here in a little bit when you're inside of Sage Intacct. Transaction updates. Dynamics GP is what is referred to as a batch-driven system, as I'm sure you all know. So what that means is you put data into, say, cash receipts or AP invoices or journal entries. They go into a batch. You then have to run a register or a journal and then post that batch before the live data is available for reporting purposes. Sage Intacct is not batch-based. It is a real-time data, and you post transactions as you enter them, which we'll see here in a little bit. Total cost of ownership, Dynamics GP had a higher upfront cost because you actually had to purchase the software, and then you had ongoing annual maintenance costs on the software side. You also had the cost of ongoing IT maintenance, which kind of goes away with Sage Intacct because you don't have to have a server now, and you don't have to have powerful workstations to run your ERP. And you also have a lower total cost of ownership in terms of annual costs moving forward because you don't have to apply software updates. You have to apply software updates to GP, so that kind of makes a higher cost, where Intacct is a subscription-based product, doesn't require any extra hardware, and all the updates, as we mentioned, kind of get automatically applied. Just some quick additional thoughts here. Sage Intacct helps eliminate unexpected hardware and upgrade costs, as I mentioned. Through some automation and built-in efficiencies, Sage Intacct helps shorten month-end close cycles, thus allowing your staff to focus more on data analysis and planning type items as opposed to just closing your months. With Sage Intacct, since their quarterly upgrades are automatic, there are no upgrade fees. And Sage Intacct has a strong built-in audit trail tracking and reporting out that is available as well. Sage Intacct Learning. So Sage provides an on-demand library of training courses. It allows your Intacct users to engage in training whenever they want to. So it helps to eliminate some training costs up front of going live on Intacct because there are really good courses that your end users can kind of watch on their own while we're working on implementation to kind of do some self-training. It's a cloud-based solution, so they can access it just like they're Intacct. They can access the training from anywhere at any time as long as they have an internet connection and a web browser. They can access the content as many times as needed as well to go through the classes or the sessions they want to look at. Two types of users available inside of Intacct. There's what's called a business user, which is a user that can do anything in the system that can be limited down in terms of what rights they have by roles by the administrator. And then there's the employee user, which is a user with more limited rights. It's more read-only access to dashboards and reports. Their ability to enter data is limited to things like entering and approving expense reports, timesheets, purchase requisitions. They can be a part of the approval process on any of the workflows that we'll talk about, but they basically have read-only access to everything else like vendors and customers and stuff like that. We're going to get into the look and feel of Intacct when we get to the actual demo here in a second. So these are some of the things we'll talk about, though, when we get to that. Dimensional accounting I mentioned. So this is where your dimensions replace your sub-accounts, and there are both predefined and user-defined dimensions available. As I mentioned, you tag your transactions in Sage Intacct across all modules to these dimensions, and we're going to see these in action coming up here. It helps streamline your reporting, thus saving time. There are a series of predefined dimensions that come. So your customer, your vendor, your employees, locations, department, classes, and item number are all dimensions that come with the system, the base Sage Intacct. If you added the inventory module or the project costing and billing / grant tracking or the contracts module, you'll get these additional dimensions right here: warehouses, projects / grants or contracts. And if you have a need outside of the base that you want to have additional data that you want to track, then you can add on user-defined dimensions to your subscription to have other dimensions available. So these can be financial in nature, where it truly replaces your sub-accounts, but they also could be outside your financial system that you just want to track data based on certain key elements that you want to report off of, but they're not necessarily financial related, but other reporting related type reasons you might want to report off of it. So here's an example: legacy chart of accounts. We have one account, for instance, 1,500 equipment. This company has this account structure of 4-3-digit location, 3-digit department, 3-digit project/grant. In order to create every possible combination of these sub-accounts with this account for posting purposes, we'd have to create 75 different accounts for this one main account to handle all these combinations. In Intacct, you have one account, 1,500 equipment. These are dimensions, and you just use these for tagging your transactions. So here's a more modern chart of accounts that Intacct uses. You'll notice it's just the main accounts. It uses the dimensions to have a more shorter, easier to manage chart of accounts for posting your transactions. And then we're going to get into dimensions in process, but you'll see here's a journal entry. We picked our account. We tagged it to a department. We tagged it to a location. That gets updated, and we see that on our reports right here. You can also use that on your dashboards that we're going to see here in a little bit, where you can filter by that up here at top. Sage Intacct reporting options. So these are the reporting options that come with the system. There are standard reports that are built into the system and pre-configured. You cannot change these reports, but you can run the reports with slight modifications to filtering, time periods, things of that nature. There's a robust financial report writer that comes with the system. There are reports that kind of come with it, but you can also create, modify and maintain your own financial reports through the report writer. And then there are custom reports that can be created using either the custom report writer or the interactive custom report writer. The custom report writer comes with the core subscription. The interactive custom report writer is an add-on to your subscription if you want it, and it allows for some more advanced reporting capabilities if you need to get into some more detailed type reporting. Workflow approvals are available in the system. This is basically where something gets submitted, but it doesn't get posted right away. And it flows through basically an approval process that you set up that people have to look at it and approve it before it kind of, goes to the live data. That's available for journal entries, vendors, AP bills, AP payments, your purchasing transactions, expense reports, expense report reimbursements, and timesheets. And these workflow approvals can be value-based, manager-based, user-based, transaction type, specific approval, or alternate approval functionality is available. And here's just some different approval types. So it could be a named user where you say, for this transaction, it goes to this user for approval. You can have it go to the manager of the person putting the transaction in. So it'll grab that person's manager from their employee record. It can go to the department that person's in, and then whoever the manager of that department is. It can be based on, this is a transaction being submitted, a PO. It can be based on the location, the department, or the project/grant of the transaction. So each of these are available. You can only have one of each of those on a transaction to use that type of approval process. It can be value-based, where it's, if it's this dollar amount, it goes to this user. If it's this dollar amount, it goes to this user. If it's this dollar amount, it goes to this user. It can also be progressive, where it starts at the lowest level of approval, and then that person approves it. If they don't have enough approval, authority to approve the overall transaction, then it jumps to the next person in the approval tree until it finally gets to somebody who has the ability to approve the entire amount. And you can stack these approvals on top of each other as well. AP automation for bills, it uses Sage AI, so you can either import your bills from a template or via an email. It'll automatically detect the details through Sage AI and create a pre-populated draft for your approval. It'll identify the vendor number, the amount, the dates, the lines, helps you reconcile in minutes. It automatically will match certain things for you. It's AI. It learns as you're doing this over time, so it gets quicker and faster as it sees the same invoices over and over of where data is at by you filling in the missing data. When it puts it in draft mode, you fill in the missing data, post it. It learns from that going forward. There is also AP automation available for payments. It's powered by CSI and it's Sage Intacct supported. Payments are initiated from within inside of Sage Intacct. CSI and the vendor determine the payment method that vendor wants to use. And then CSI will issue the payments out using the vendor preferred method of either a check, ACH, virtual card, so on and so forth. Bank reconciliation. If you want to bring in cleared transactions from your bank, there's a couple of different ways to do that. You could do an import, a manually import of a CSV file from your bank. And there are thousands of banks that are supported inside of Sage Intacct. Or you can turn on bank feeds in your subscriptions, and that's an automatic direct connection between your Sage Intacct and the bank, and it pulls transactions in as they're happening. And then using matching rules that you set up, it applies those to your in-cash management, to your Sage transactions. Exceptions get flagged. If there are transactions in the bank that you haven't recorded yet inside of Intacct, like interest or fees or whatnot, it'll create the payment or the journal entries for you out there from the bank transactions that you can post and save you time from having to create those. And then AR automation is a self-service portal. There's both a customer front end to it here and a back end kind of credit manager front end as well. So the customer side is where they can log on and see their invoices, make payments, things of that nature on their invoices. And then on the back end side, this is where you can record notes of you talk to this customer and they said X about their invoices. So you have both the front end and the back end side of that AR automation. So we're going to jump into a demo here now. I'm going to bring up Sage Intacct. So this is what Sage Intacct looks like. I have it set to where I come into a dashboard when I first log in. You can make your landing page be whatever you want when you kind of come into it. So let's kind of get started here. Let's talk a little bit about the look and feel. So as I mentioned, there is a top level that sits above all your companies or entities, and I am in the top level by default. So you see there's a top level, and then I have my companies and my entities. My top level is not a company. It's just a way for a place for you to put in your customers, your items, your vendors, your chart of accounts, your dimensions, and then they are used by your entities below it. You can restrict that down. You can restrict who can and can't get into that, each entity, or who can get into the top level. So if I go into my 100 company, you'll see it's going to launch that into in a separate tab. And I am now in company 100, and I'm only seeing data that is in company 100 at this point. Okay. We'll go ahead and close out of that. You can restrict your users down if users can only get into certain companies or entities. So underneath of admin, when I get into my users, I'm going to go into Lisa here. And you'll see on Lisa, she has a restriction where she's only able to access company 100, and she is not able to access the top level. So when Lisa logs in, she will automatically go into entity 100, and she will not see top level 200 and 300 on her drop down. So you can do some restrictions out there. You can, if you want, since you're in a web browser here, the way you open multiple screens is you just right click on the tab up here and you say duplicate. And then from here, I can move on to other things like going out and looking at journal entries. So you can have multiple tabs open here. You can undock these tabs if you want to be able to use your Alt tab between screens. Either one of those work. You can right click and duplicate as many times as you would like. Everything is menu driven from the drop down right here. You can change the order of these modules by dragging and dropping if you want. So things that you access on a regular basis, you might put up top. Also inside of here, you can flag your favorites. So if I go to customers a lot and I want to kind of favorite that, I hover over that. I click on this star right here. Notice it went yellow, and you'll see I have different favorites as I click on things here. Where it's putting that at is underneath of this star right here. On the drop down, I see my favorites out there that I can quickly access from my favorite screen without having to go down through all the menus. Also, users will only see the modules and or the options that they have access to. So it helps to streamline each user's menu interface and user experience because they're only seeing what they have access to. There's a robust help system in this, built right into Intacct. So I'm going to jump into my vendor screen here for a minute. And I'm going to go up here and go, whenever you're on a screen, let me get into a vendor. Whenever you're on a screen, you can go to help on this page. And Intacct has a very good help system out here based right from the screen that you're on. I can say, okay, what about creating a vendor? And it walks you through the entire vendor screen, field by field, telling you about what every field is, what it's used for, all right from the help right there, all online, right from inside of Sage Intacct from the screen that you're on. All right, dimensions. So dimensions, as I said, replace your sub accounts. So if I go into company setup, I have a series of dimensions out here. I'm going to go into my departments, and this is where you define your departments if you have departments. So sales, operations, admin, marketing, on down the line. So you just create these, you give it a code, which you control, you give it a name, you can say whether it's active or not. You can put some restrictions on it. This bottom part right here is not turned on out of the box for Intacct, but it can be turned on, free as part of your subscription. So you can limit down sub accounts or dimensions of what customers they can be used on or what GL accounts they can be used on. And if you set up this functionality, that's how you can prevent certain sub account or certain dimensions from being used on accounts that it doesn't apply to. So you might put some more restrictions on your balance sheet accounts, for instance, because you're not necessarily going to hit different departments and classes and things that may be for your balance sheet account, but for your P&L accounts, you might turn all that stuff on to be able to hit all those dimensions or be able to use those dimensions. So you have different ones out here. So here's my classes, for instance. On the classes, I wanted to point out on these dimensions, you could set up a parent-child relationship. So notice that 400 is a parent and 405 through 425 are child items of that 400. I have set 400 to be active non-posting. So that means that I cannot post any transactions directly to the class 400. It's just a parent that rolls up all of the other ones below it. So if I post anything to class 405, 410, 415, 425, I can report individually off each of these. Or I could run the 400 one on my reports or dashboards, and it takes all of these combined and rolls them up real quickly, real concise for me out there on my reports and dashboards. Let's say we don't refer to classes. We refer to this as something else. We call it our service dimension. You can change the terminology inside of Intacct really easily by going out here to the terminology part. And I'm going to find my class right here, and I'm going to edit this. And I'm going to say for United States, this is a single, I call it a class. I'm sorry, single, I call it a service. And if it's plural, it is services. Okay, and I want to go ahead and save this. And let's see what this does. So it's going through, it takes a minute because it's changing everything throughout this, Sage Intacct here for me. Okay, now that it's done, if I go back, let me refresh this. I'm going to now go to company, dimensions, and notice how class now became services. And you're going to see all the entry screens everywhere going forward. This is going to be referred to as services now, not class or classes. Okay. Dashboards. You have dashboards that are available out in the system. So I'm going to go out here to dashboards and look at a couple of these. I'm going to go to general, and I'm going to go to one that's been created out here called dimensional insights. So your dashboards, you can control these, and there are different widgets you can add to them. These are called scorecards right here, where are tied to a group of accounts or an account. These are reports that can be added to your dashboards. You can have charts and graphs and everything out here. You add by clicking on this little gear over here. That's how you get in and start, excuse me, fooling around with the setup of your dashboards in terms of how you're going to filter it and things of that nature. If you want to add to it, you click on this plus sign here, and this takes you to add additional components to drag it, to drop them on your dashboards. You can drill down on any of this. So if I want to look at what makes up revenue surveillance, notice I got this nice, pretty colors I can set up out here. So red, what means it's kind of going in the wrong direction. Green means it's going in the right direction. So revenue for surveillance is green arrow going up. So I have a 54.29% increase from prior month on revenue surveillance. If this was lower, it would be a red arrow pointing down, but I can drill down on this. Okay, and it shows me the underlying data for the current month and the prior month. I see the numbers. There's the 941,800. I can drill down on that, and it takes me to all the accounts that make up this. So this is only one account that makes up this widget, but if there's other accounts, they'd be listed down here. And then it shows me all the transactions for that time frame and what the amounts were. And here's my ending balance, 941,800 that we saw. I can click on one of these dollar amounts, and it takes me, oh, I already clicked on it. It was just taking a minute. Let me give it a minute here again. So it takes me to the underlying transactions that make that up, and I can see the postings out here. So I see all the accounts that were hit, and I can see that this was created through a sales invoice. I can click on that, and it takes me out to the sales invoice and shows me all the transactions that make up that amount. And from here, I can view the actual sales invoice and keep drilling all the way down and seeing the individual posting details out there. So I did all that from drilling down from a dashboard overall monthly amount all the way down to an individual sales transaction out there. You can use these filters up top. So date filters. Here's my department, my locations, my services. So if I want to look at 100 sales and I want to look at it just for the residential service, I pick those, I click apply, and watch these numbers automatically change. And then it refreshes that data for the time frame I set it based on the dimensional values I gave it. And it shows me my new data based on those filtering. There are role-based dashboards you can create as well. So I have one out here for a CFO type of a user, so more high-end. So I see company performance for the prior 12 months, where I see revenue, cost of goods sold, operating expenses, net income loss. I have other widgets out here that I can look at and click on, some working capital, cash on hand, debt ratios, all these kind of things. On any of these, I can click down. So if I want to say, wow, our revenue is way up here for December, why is that? I can hover over that and click on it, and I can see all the categories of the revenue. And just like we saw on the last dashboard, I can drill down and keep drilling and drilling and drilling to look at the underlying data. I also have the ability of putting filtering on here as well. So if I want to look at like the operations, I can apply that, and it just shows me my operations department out there. Okay. So that dashboards are all out there. Your companies or entities are all defined out here underneath of entities. So this is where you create your companies. You give it your federal ID numbers, what color code you want to use for them, what's the first month for your fiscal month, your tax month, all that kind of stuff is set up out here. You then set up your relationship between these companies for your due tos and due froms. So here's the 100 and 200 due tos and due froms, 100 to 300 and 200 to 300. And so when you start getting into your inner entity postings, it'll use these accounts for your due tos and due froms. Okay. So let's look at general ledger here a little bit. So I'm going to go to general ledger. I'm going to go to accounts. This is my list views. I can search on a particular column. If I know I'm looking for something with the word expense in it, I can do that. And I see anything with the word expense in it. If I'm looking for something with the word rent in it, I can do that. Or I can just type it in if I know what it is on the account number. But I'm going to go into rent here. Okay. And inside of here is where you set up an account. This is where you tell it by account which dimensions are required. So if you say a dimension is required for an account, it'll force you to put something in that dimension, or it won't let you post it. Okay. Again, like we saw the restrictions before on the departments, we can see those same restrictions underneath of the accounts right here. They populate each other when you start putting in your restrictions. Again, if you turn this part of the system on, so you'll notice for rent, I only have it going available for the 100, 2, 3, 4, 500, and 550 departments. Okay. And I'll see those same restrictions like we saw underneath the departments already. There are statistical accounts available in the system. If you have non-financial accounts you want to track, like employee head count, number of hours, square feet, things of that nature, you can set them up underneath your statistical accounts. And then you post to that using the your statistical journal entries right here. So these are non-financial in nature where it doesn't affect your balance sheet and PLs. They don't have to be balanced. It's just putting, adding to or subtracting from your statistical accounts to be used on your financial reports. Budgeting is available in the system. So you go to this budget repository here. You can set up any number of budgets that you want. So I'm going to look at current year budget. Okay. So I'm going to go into budget details here. And then I can see my current year budget by account, by my dimensions. I can set up my budget numbers out here. And then it'll use those throughout all my reporting in the system and whatnot. Let's look at a journal entry here real quick. So I'm going to go down and make a payroll journal entry. I'm going to view transactions. And I'm going to add a journal entry. And I want to show you some intercompany here. So I'm going to say this is a payroll journal entry. Okay, my source entity is 100 because that's where it got paid out of. And let's say, ADP, Paycor, Paychex, whoever is my payroll provider, they provided me a PDF or an Excel spreadsheet or something of what the entry is. I can drag and drop that right on my payroll journal entry here. So you'll see there's my payroll journal entry they gave me. I dropped it right there. This will post with this, and anytime I drill down, I can look at that posting. I can look at the attachment to it as well. So I'm going to post here to my accounts. I'm going to hit that GL account. I'm going to tag this to the 100 company. I'm going to tag this to the sales department, and I'm going to tag this to my residential class, and this is going to be for $1,000. I can look at my other dimensions by clicking on the detail drop down here. So here's where I would see my customers all the way through to my project/grant. I can edit the layout. If let's say I have projects or grants turned on and I wanted to use that dimension, I can edit the layout. Nope, not there, right here. I can edit the layout here, and I can then drag and drop the project/grant dimension up here, and it will be on the main line then, save it, and now it's like that going forward. But let me finish entering this in. We're going to post this to the 200 company or entity, and it's going to go to the 200 department. and it's going to go to the 200 class of commercial, and it's $1,500. And then I'm going to hit my cash side of it. And this is from the 100 company because that's where the cash came out of. And that all looks good. And I'm going to go ahead and say post. As we mentioned, it's real time. So this is posting it to my general ledger right away. Okay. Here it is posted, it says here. Even though it's posted based on the timing of your transactions, I still have the ability where I could go in and edit this if I hit the wrong amount, the wrong dimension, things of that nature. I can still edit this for a certain amount of time. I could always reclass a transaction too if I made a mistake. But the reason I wanted to come in here is because of the source entity and the locations here. Notice it created an intercompany posting for me as part of this. Okay. Let's see. Let's go out here and look at the transactions now on the reports. If I go to reports, general ledger, and run this report, I'm going to see my postings out here. So here's the one today, 520. It hit this account here of cash. It hit the 100 location. I can drill down, just like I saw on the dashboards, to drill down to the underlying data to look at all the stuff out there. Okay. I can also import in journal entries. If I have a file that I have a journal entry in, I want to go in here and I'm going to say import transactions, and I'm going to browse down. I have an Excel spreadsheet here that I have a template for a journal entry. So this is some prepaid, this is the expensing of some prepaid insurance. So I'm going to have that there. I'm going to import that. Assuming I have no errors, I'll get successful import. I'll say done. I know it posted it to my GJ journal because that's where I put it to go to. And you'll notice here, expense of prepaid insurance. It's saying 519 because I didn't change the date on the file. But if I go out here and look at that transaction, you're going to see it's the transaction that we just looked at, really quickly imported that in from a file. And you could use that for any of your journal entries that you're wanting to do. Financial report writer, as I mentioned, it's got a kind of a robust financial report writer out here in the system. So I'm going to go out to profit and loss, actual versus budget, and edit that. So here's the financial report writer. You set up your rows, you set up your columns, you set up any calculations, filtering, formatting. You just walk through this wizard of setting this all up. If you have a dimension you're using, you can create one column for that dimension and say create it for every value of that, and it will create a column for every value of your dimension. That's how you can quickly get your departmentalized financial statements, by just having one column that says actual for the dimensions, and it will show each department, for instance, across the column, and you could have a total of all those at the end. So easy to maintain. You can create these columns for actual budgets. You can do calculations, variance calculations. I'm going to go ahead and preview this out to HTML. And when I preview this out to HTML, here's my P&L for December 31st, 2018. I see last year's month-end numbers. I have the ability so I got actual versus budget, budget difference, variance. I can drill down on any of these because they're hyperlinks, just like we've seen on everything we looked at so far. I can keep drilling down all the way to underlying transactions. I could go to my payroll here, for instance, and if I drill down, I could go to that attachment I have out there. So I got that. I can also, from here, export this out to Excel, and it dumps it to Excel for me. Okay, I can dump it right out to Excel if I wanted to. Keeps all my formatting, color coding, and everything out there. All right, moving on here. Accounts payable. On your vendors, you have your RWS commercial. I'm going to go to here. Okay, so on your address on your vendor tab, you have your address and your constant data out there. On the additional information tab, you can put attachments. Like if I have a rental agreement, I can drop that on there and that attaches that with that vendor. I can have multiple attachments per vendor, multiple attachments per transaction, whether a vendor's on hold, what the default GL account is for that vendor, their contact list, their payment information in terms of a check, the terms code, if they're ACH, what their ACH information is, restrictions. I can restrict, like I mentioned, a vendor down to an entity or entities if I wanted to by making it be a restricted vendor. Okay, let's look at AP bills here briefly. So I'm going to go into AP bills, and I'm going to put a bill in here. I'm going to add a bill, and I'm going to pick my ABC supply company vendor. I have an attachment, let's say. So I have a AP supply company bill that I want to drag and drop that in there. That'll go along for the ride like we've seen with everything else. So there's the attachment. Okay, I'm going to come in here and say it's going to office supplies of $500. And it's going to location 100. And it's going to drop down list of vendor or departments. See how I see 500, 550, and 575. I'm going to pick 550. And I'm going to pick the residential service. And then I'm going to come to my next line and I'm going to hit my trade show account. Okay, and this is going to be for $250. This is going to go to the New York location underneath of the 100 company. Look when I click on the drop down on department though. See how 550 and 575 don't show up? That's because of the restrictions I put on the department and the accounts that we talked about earlier. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and pick admin, and I'm going to go ahead and pick the commercial class, and I'm going to go ahead and say post, and that transaction posted real time out to the system. Okay. I can also go out here and say add to do a new bill. And once I pick a vendor, so if I pick ABC again, any vendor you pick and you say populate from last bill, it'll pull all this information from the last bill you did for that vendor that you could then go out and just change and edit the lines if need be. Let's look at on the AP automation part here real quick. So I can go out here and go upload. And I can, so I have a file out here. Let me drag this over here. So here's an AP bill, the PDF. I can grab that and drag and drop that in here and say create bill. And I'm going to refresh this screen. And when it refreshes, you're going to see how it's analyzing up here at top. So what it's doing is it's using the AP automation, the Sage artificial intelligence we talked about. It's reading that PDF and it's going to create a bill for me. When it's done, it'll go into a draft mode that I can then go out and look at to post to my real data. Okay, because even though I said it's real time, there's also the ability to put it in draft mode where it saves it for you, but it doesn't post it. And like I said, if it can't read certain data, you fill in the missing data, and then it learns going forward from there. You have the ability of doing recurring bills, just like you have the ability of doing recurring journal entries. So if I go to recurring bills and I look at this, you set up the bill, you give it a schedule, and once you save that schedule, then whenever that bill needs to run, on midnight of the day it needs to run, it'll run on, at midnight or shortly thereafter of the time zone that you're in, it'll run the recurring bill or the recurring journal entry, for instance, if you have that. Last thing I want to talk about is some workflow automation. So I'm going to go in here and put in a purchase order requisition. Okay, so I'm going to create a requisition. And I'm going to say it's the ABC supply vendor. And I have a requisition form I want to attach to it. So I can drag and drop it to the attachment here. Okay. I'm going to go down here and go to my items, and I'm going to hit my miscellaneous item of 60340, which is my office supplies. And it's going to go to the 100 location. And it's going to go to the 300 admin department. And it's going to go to the 300 retail service. And it's going to be for $500. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead. Notice this doesn't say post now. This says submit. So I'm going to submit that. Notice this says submitted, and I can't convert it yet. So what's happening now is it's going through the approval tree process. So John Approver is the person who approves these PO requisitions. So John would have got an email saying, "Hi, John, you have this purchase requisition that you need to approve out there." And I can click on this link to launch me to go out there. I already have John Approver logged in over here on another screen. So see how I'm logged in as John Approver. John Approver can see on dashboards if they have that widget on a dashboard. I can go into my role-based controller dashboard, and I put a widget out here for AP bills that require my approval, purchasing transactions that require my approval. So right from here, I can click on the magnifying glass and go out to where I need to do my approvals. Or John can go right out to purchasing, approved transactions. I can see the transactions out here. I can view it. Okay, I can look at everything. I can look at the attachment out here. I can look at all this. If it's not what I want, I can say decline and give a reason why, and it goes back to the person that put that in, and they would have to then make the necessary changes and resubmit it, and it would go through the approval process again. Or if John thinks this looks good, he can approve it and say, "This looks good, thanks." And I can say approve. And notice it's going to drop off of John's approval list now. Let me move John Approver back over. I'm back logged in as Joe Gupser here. Watch where this says submitted right here. Refresh my screen. Now it's going to say pending. It is now available for me to now move forward with. Okay. And Joe Gupser, my user, would have gotten an email saying, "Hey, your PO requisition has been approved. The comment was, 'This looks good, thanks.'" Okay, so there's email, notifications that go out to the person that needs to approve once it is approved. And once it's now approved, you can go out here and say, "Convert this to a purchase order." And it creates a purchase order out here, and I can say post it. So I now have a PO created from that purchase order. It has my attachment attached to it. Let that create. We just got one more thing to look at here. Once this comes up, okay, so that has now been posted. I now have a PO. I could go back in here. I can print or email this PO. If I print it, here's what the PO looks like by default out of the box. But also right from here, I can say, let's email that right to my vendor. Okay, I want to pull that down, and I want to send this to my Gmail account because that way it's not to and from me. And I'll say, okay. So right there from Sage Intacct, it emailed it. And let me see if my Chrome refreshed fast enough. Yep, it did. So I now got an email on my Gmail account. "Hi, vendor, here's a PO, here's the attachment," and then right there, it goes right out to your vendor. Okay? So all that approval process is all built right in. If John Approver, depending on how you had your approval process set up, if John Approver didn't have, let's say you had value-based and it was progressive, if John Approver couldn't approve up to $500, it would have went to the next person in line and then the next person until finally somebody with a high enough approval level would have approved it. And then now that it's a PO, I can, if I wanted to, go out to order, purchase order. I can convert it from here out to a vendor invoice and post that. And then the very last thing I'll show you is out underneath the purchasing invoice, vendor invoice. I now have an invoice that just got created today. And you could have approval processes on different things out there through that as well. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover today. I know we're getting close to the end of the hour here. So I wanted to, kind of stop here and see if we had any questions that came up during the webinar at all.
So Joe, what would be a standard implementation timeframe?
That depends on a couple of factors. It depends on things like number of companies that you would have. It depends on like what modules you are using. But for the most part, depending on all those factors and how much history you want to bring in, things of that nature. But typically, the range is anywhere from like 3 months to 7 months. And again, it just depends on, things like number of companies, modules you have, how much history we're bringing in, how quickly as an end user do you want to go, through the implementation process? How much time can, the company that's migrating over to Intacct, devote towards, the process as well. But typically 3 to 7 months. And again, it just depends on all those factors that I mentioned there.
All right. Thank you, Joe. That was the only question that we had.
That was the only one? Okay. Yep. Thanks, Brett. Well, that brings us to the end of the webinar here. I want to, again, thank everyone for attending the webinar. If you have any questions, reach out to me, Brett, Chris, Roland. I know some of you guys deal with Roland. Reach out. We can, get together with you guys, talk further, look at some more stuff and more in depth, look at things more specific to how you would need to use it. If we can help you in any way, let us know. Again, thanks for attending and have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.